We'll do it live.
Okay. No.
We'll do it live. It. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Good evening. Good evening. We're back here on a Monday with Dr. Jared Johnson. I saw you got the. Do you prefer Dr. J? Is that how you prefer people to?
It's more cool.
Dr. Johnson, Dr. Jared Johnson, Dr. J. I mean, you've earned it. You paid for the degree, so you tell us what you prefer here.
You know, as long as you just put doctor in there, that makes me feel cool.
Well,
it doesn't really mean anything. I wasted a bunch of money, I guess. I don't know.
We may need a doctor tonight, kind of like a group therapy as we reflect on the look at right out of the gate. Right out of the gate, there's already bald slander in the comments.
Wrong though, so it doesn't count.
That's all. That's fine. Good to see you, Tony, Darren. Welcome. I see we're getting a lot of comments on the YouTube page. I don't know if I don't necessarily mind it. I just want to make sure that the Facebook stream is okay. Facebook comments coming in. CJ, good to see you. Rick, good to see you.
We did get called out last time by the YouTubers, by the way.
Did we? What happened?
Yeah, somebody said, "Hey, I know you don't pay attention to us YouTube guys, but we have things to say too." And I was like, "Oh shit!"
I feel like you pay attention.
So let's be fair. Let's be even.
I will keep an eye out for that tonight because listen.
Yeah,
it wasn't good last weekend. It wasn't good last weekend. Jill, good to see you. We went into the game with high hopes. We were all sort of hopeful that some of the things that we learned to love about this Michigan team during the 2025 season, in spite of the concerns that we had, that some of those things that we loved, would ultimately be strong enough to carry Michigan to victory. But it was clear to me on Saturday that, this current team versus that current Ohio State team, it was just apples and oranges. It was like playing a completely different sport. And we'll get into that. But before we get there, I do want to sit and see, you can see Tony talking about this a little bit. That's something that I want to just hop on a bit here before we get into the Ohio State thing. Dude, the environment, like I was reminded once again that this is without question the greatest rivalry in all of sports. And it just, when you got onto campus, when you got near the big house, when you walked into the tunnel, and even in the photo room, like things were set up differently. There was more chairs. There's more media people. I'm standing in the tunnel and it's like, at times it's loud, at times it's quiet, but there is like an electricity just flowing through that building that you don't get in any other game. And then of course it's like, here comes Nick Saban. Here comes Pat McAfee. Oh, there's Tom Brady just kind of hanging out. Like it was, for somebody who grew up a fan of the program, to just be in that environment and be around those people, it's always such a surreal experience. And then the crowd, like everything was electric. I was in the tunnel when Michigan came down to take the field. I was in the tunnel when Ohio State came down to take the field. It was just exactly what you would hope to get from that rivalry, right? Two different approaches. Michigan was loud and rowdy and shouting and hooting and hollering. They had a big, stereo escorting them to the field. And Ohio State came out of the locker room quiet, just looking like a team that was ready to take care of business. And they certainly did that. But I will say this, because we don't have a lot of common ground with the folks from Columbus and Ohio State fans. But I want to say this, like it really hit home how dependent we are on each other to have that experience. Like we hate those guys. We don't want to see them succeed, but damn it, Jared, like Batman needed Joker, right? Like you need that relationship, and the fact that we have that with Ohio State and we get to experience that type of rivalry game once every year is it's incredible, and I'm grateful that I got to take it in. So I just wanted to get that out of the way before we actually get into the game itself. Jared, where did you watch the game from, by the way? Were you on some sort of remote island? Were you sipping margaritas? Where were you?
I was at the golf course. So, yeah, I will second that on the crowd noise, because when I had to go relieve myself, I would realize when I missed a good play, because you could hear the fans. So it was awesome. I could tell what was going on with the game while I was taking a piss because you guys were so loud.
So a lot of your let me see, how do I say this? A lot of your analysis from tonight's show is going to be basically dependent on your bathroom breaks from the golf course.
No, man, I pissed like twice. Okay. We had a TV, and I'll share with you. It's funny what you said about the Ohio State fans. So we had a group of them next to us in the tent next to us, and they would score, they'd bang on the tent. We'd kick a field goal, we'd bang on the tent, we'd make a play, whatever, just talking shit. But then we noticed that they were gone, like they just weren't in the tent, and I was like, these guys just left, like the tent's up. So I went outside and I was like, where did these guys go? And they're all sitting in this minivan, and the buddy's got a phone up. And I'm like, I knock on the window. I said, what are you guys doing, man? And he's like, our generator went out. We lost the TV.
Oh, goodness.
Dude, come on. Come inside the tent with us. So
you invited Buckeyes into your tent?
Yeah. So the Ohio State guys came in. They were cool. They had some pizza with us, and and they were talking about under Bryce, and they had some thoughts of their own, which I thought were pretty incredible of what they thought where our program was going. They were actually very intelligent. Shocking from Ohio that they were intelligent, but yeah, they were actually pretty good dudes. And they watched the end of the game with us, thanked us. They were pretty cool. And we said, hey, no cheering, no matter what happens. So of course Ohio State scored like a couple times. We'd all look at them, just waiting. All right, you can stay, but it's a rivalry. Sometimes you got to have that respect. I think sometimes that gets lost. Unfortunately, living in East Lansing, I can tell you most of that other side, Michigan State, they don't have. Yeah, never would I invite them in the tent, but they were pretty cool.
I don't think you're winning a lot of people over here by inviting Buckeyes into your tent.
Good, man.
Okay, but listen, so here's what we should do. I think that the way I want to approach this tonight is I just want to have an honest conversation about what we saw on Saturday, because I think a lot of us were frustrated by it. And Jared, you and I were texting about this quite a bit earlier today, and you called me. You said I was like a Debbie Downer, a negative.
No, I said doom and gloom is what I said. Every time we lose, you're like, sell the team.
No. And people on here know that. I'm not like that, but I do have some issues with what I saw on Saturday. Jared says I'm doom and gloom, and so we're going to figure that out tonight. Jared, the first thing I want to do talking about this game, I just want to get your overall impression. I mean, you sat back and you watched it. Mm-hmm. Tell me, what did you see play out on Saturday?
I saw 6 freshmen start on offense against historically one of the best defenses college football has ever seen, and against a very intelligent defensive coordinator who I despise. That's what I saw, right? The game, it looked like that. It looked like a bunch of freshmen on the field playing against guys who were juniors and seniors and who had an axe to grind, for their whole career against this Michigan team, regardless of the fact that 90% of the guys on this Michigan team weren't even part of this streak, right? Weren't big impact players. That's what I saw. I saw, the fact that probably 3 of our top 10 players weren't on the field. Marshall getting hurt, Haynes not being there, Ernest Hausman going back to Uganda or whatever the hell he decided to do. And that really affects you in a game like this. I mean, the 3 NFL talent type guys, aren't on the field, and especially Marshall and Haynes. That's our bread and butter. That's like if you take Tate and Jeremiah Smith away from Ohio State, I think it could have been a little bit of a different game. Now their defense just dominated us to the point that
unfortunately, I don't know how much of a difference that would have made.
No, maybe they would have scored 24 instead of 27. I don't know, but you know what I mean? That defense was just incredible. And we just didn't have, and we talked about it. What did we say? Every one of us on multiple podcasts, you got to hit saying, you got to put them on the ground. We didn't do it. The one thing that we said we needed to do, we couldn't do. And I mean, you're doomed, man. That kid, he's accurate, and he picked us apart. And I think both of us talked about that. I mean, but here's what I want to say too. I just, to the fans, it's football. These kids are they're kids. There's a vast difference when you go from high school to Division I, Big Ten football, just like there's a vast difference when you go from Big Ten to the NFL. Like look at Marvin Harrison Jr. He was unstoppable at Ohio State, right? He was a thorn in our side even when we were beating him. He was all-world, Heisman-type guy, struggling in the NFL. So for these kids to come up and us to play 6 freshmen, right, it does matter. There's a vast difference when Bryce Underwood is going against 11 guys across the field. 4 or 5 of them, I believe, were 5-stars as well, and now they're juniors and seniors, right? I think junior, senior Bryce Underwood, as in college, matches up completely different against those guys. And Michigan, I hate to say this to fans, You're not going to win the game just because you're Michigan. Just because you come in and say you have the most wins in history and you have all these accolades, it doesn't matter. It's a football game. You're not just going to win because you're Michigan. And I despise fans saying, well, we're Michigan. Nobody gives a shit. Nobody gives a shit anymore. And I think, a lot, Dave Portnoy even said it. You got to put a product on the field. And sometimes that product's not going to be good enough. It's football. You ain't going to win every game. All right, I'm out, man.
Well, listen, I wanted to let you go as long as you wanted to go there. And I think you said a lot, and there's a lot to unpack. And there's one thing that I want to say. I can see the comments coming in from Facebook and YouTube. We are going to get to these, and we're going to go through some of them. Yeah. They're coming in fast and furious tonight, as you would expect. But Jared, I think you said a lot there that I think we're going to unpack as the discussion goes on. But here's what I saw. If we're just talking about strictly what we saw on Saturday, I think that even though we were optimistic going into this one, I kind of knew after Michigan's first 2 drives that the Wolverines weren't going to win this one, even though they walked away with points. You came out, you give Ohio State your best punch, right? You get down in the red zone. It looked like Jordan Marshall was on his way to having one of those incredible, memorable, this is how you make a name for yourself in this rivalry type games. And Michigan gets down in the red zone. They sputter out. They settle for a field goal. When they came away with just 6 points on those first 2 drives, you get the 3 points. Jair Hill gets the interception. You come back the other way. You're in great field position, and you can't put the ball in the end zone. When Michigan walked away with 6 points out of those first 2 drives, I knew that Ohio State was going to win that game because you knew the Buckeyes were going to find the end zone. You knew that Ohio State was going to put up points. And the fact that Michigan couldn't do it right out of the gate, that was concerning to me. The other thing that I think I took away from Saturday is this. And Jared, you're big on defending Bryce Underwood because he's a true freshman quarterback. He's an 18-year-old guy. Yeah, hell, you're wearing his jersey over there, and I understand it.
On purpose.
And I want to make it clear that I am not slamming Bryce Underwood here. I'm not trying to be critical of Bryce Underwood, but I also want to just have an honest conversation. The Michigan passing attack from week 1 to week 12, I don't really see any sort of noticeable improvement other than the emergence of Andrew Marsh. And I'm going to give him his flowers, who, by the way, was a no-show on Saturday. That's not entirely his fault because he wasn't targeted a single time on Saturday. It's kind of hard to make an impact in the game when you don't get the ball. Mm-hmm. But overall, to me, Jared, when I look at this passing offense from week 1 to week 12, I look at a passing offense that ranks 100th in the nation. I look at Bryce Underwood, a guy who didn't throw a touchdown pass in the last 4 of his 5 games. You and I talked about it a lot on this show. I kept pounding the table and saying, you got to do more through the air. We know you can run the ball. We know you can do this. We know you can do that. You got to run, or you got to pass the ball more. You got to get more consistency through the air, because at some point in time, I said this word for word, at some point in time, you're going to have to lean on that. At some point in time, the running game isn't going to work, and you're going to have to make shit happen through the air. And on Saturday, Michigan couldn't do it, and you saw it in the final numbers from Bryce Underwood. So, Jared, I really want to stick on that for a little bit, because on Saturday, you mentioned it, Michigan without a lot of their top ponies, right? You don't have Justice Haynes. Jordan Marshall's not 100%, far from it, and he was out most of the game on Saturday. And you also don't have Max Bredesen, who the entire season, Max Bredesen was a guy that was making a lot of shit happen in the running game, right? A lot of the success that they had was because of a key block from number 44. I'm a little bit confused about the Bredesen thing. We'll maybe talk about that a little bit later. But overall, because you spent the entire season really leaning heavily on the rushing attack, you get down to game 12 at the end of the season, and guess what you don't have, Jared? You don't have Justice Haynes. You don't have Jordan Marshall, not 100% anyway, and you don't have Max Bredesen. And now here you are in a situation where you've got to rely on Bryson Cusdahl, or you've got to rely on your 5-star, $12 million quarterback to move the ball down through the air, and they couldn't do it, Jared. And so I'm going to ask you, do you think, because you spent all season defending it, do you think Michigan made a mistake in the way that they approached the passing attack all season long?
No, flat out no. Look at Washington when they got to the national championship game against us, a defense that is similar to this defense, right? So I think the 23 Michigan defense, this defense, and I think it was the 20 or 21 Alabama defense, all averaged gave up under 8 points a game. Only teams that ever do that. when Michael Penix, experienced quarterback with stud receivers, right? Rome Odunze, he had some guys, some first round picks. They ran into that Michigan defense, looked like trash. That's what happened here. I don't care what, like, this defense might just be that good. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we made Michael Penix, that machine was rolling, and they looked like nothing. 9 sacks. Like, I mean, what did you expect? They say defense wins championships. That defense came out and said, we are historically maybe one of the best of all time, and we're going to show you. And thank God for them, Ohio State. They had an 18-year-old kid on the other side with 5 other freshmen starting with him. And then probably the best one on the field, Jordan Marshall, got hurt. When his arm went limp and he walked off the field, that's when I knew we were done. Like, that's it. I mean, Bryce Cusdall, awesome, had a good game, great story. Ain't happening against that defense. It ain't happening.
Yeah,
so,
and
there was games where that's not true. Their offense struggled against everybody. There's games where he threw for 280 yards. There's games where he threw for 3 touchdowns. 4 of those 5 games you talk about, I think we won 4 of those 5 games. So I don't understand the picking apart of the stats. Like, we won, but I wanted to see a touchdown in the air. We won, but I want to see this, because we won a national championship with JJ being erratic or not having to throw the ball, and everybody was fine with it. So I think that defense was just that good. You got to give them their flowers too, as you said. For Marsh is a whole other topic. We can discuss that too, obviously. But
sure, yeah, and look,
that defense is incredible, man.
There's no question that Ohio State's defense is the top defense in the country for a reason, and they showed exactly why that is on Saturday. Michigan just really didn't have an answer offensively, and so, Jared, I think that there is certainly a lot to that. Nobody's going to dispute that. The numbers are what the numbers are. Go look at the Buckeye defense. There's a reason why going into that game they were giving up just over 7 points per game.
7.5. Yeah,
right.
We put up 9.
Sure. Okay. So there. Listen, I understand all that, but I also saw a Michigan offense that, even though they were moving the ball through the air a little bit, like, needed a field goal to beat Northwestern, right? Mm-hmm. It was a 1-possession game against Purdue. And that offensive performance, I get that things were happening on the ground, but Michigan they played very uninspired football against Purdue. I don't think anybody's sitting here and looking at the stats against Central Michigan or looking at the stats against, New Mexico, right? I don't think we're leaning on those things. So it's like, you're trying to find, like, where were those instances where Michigan's offense was tested, especially through the air, and they came through and delivered. I think you could point to Washington as one of those games.
Great game.
But then you look at USC, not really. You look at Oklahoma, not really. You look at Michigan State, not really. You look at Purdue, not really. You look at Northwestern, sure, maybe. Maryland, yeah. But, like, dude, if you're hanging your hat on a 3-point win over Northwestern, a convincing win over Maryland, I think that's why people are frustrated, because on the surface, 9-3 looks good. And we talked about this when we were texting before we went live tonight. Going into the season, a lot of people predicted 9-3. We're exactly where we thought we would be at this point. So it's weird that it doesn't feel great. But the reason that it doesn't feel great, Jared, is because if you sat through and watched all of these games, it just felt like everything was a struggle. It never seemed like anything was clicking. And now here we are 12 games into the season. We still haven't seen Michigan play their best football. We didn't see them play a complete game. And honestly, maybe you can help me. Can you point to one area outside of the emergence of Andrew Marsh? And by the way, neither one of us are like film guys, so we're not sitting in a room breaking down film and going through progression and, where Bryce's eyes are going. So we're not taking that level of approach. But Jared, outside of the emergence of Andrew Marsh, from week 1 to week 12, in what areas did this passing attack improve?
Well, and that's my other thing, right? So you bring in a grad transfer like McCulley, and you expect him to lead that wide receiver room. You expect him to do things. You have Samaj Morgan, who's an experienced type guy, right? You expected some things out of him. He couldn't catch a cold. Donovan McCulley was up and down, to say the least. The leader of your wide receiver room is a freshman who took 3 games to get his footing. You know what I mean? So I think
hold on. I'm not going to let you.
I'm going to answer your question here because Jake Butt actually talked about it. Jake and Devin Gardner talked about it. They said if you do watch, and again, you and I aren't film guys, but I watched a little bit of their show and what they were talking about. Bryce did start getting through his progressions a little bit more. then when he ran into like an elite defense like Ohio State, it was so sped up for him. And I can't express enough to people. And again, I wasn't an all-world athlete as much as I joke, but I did go from a small school to even a junior college, and the speed difference even at that in basketball was so different. And to go from Belleville, Michigan to Ann Arbor and play these types of teams, like it is a different thing. If my question back to you would be, if I told you coming into this season that the last 4 or 5 games of the regular season you would start 6 to 8 freshmen on the offense, how many wins do you think you would get?
Yeah, I mean, I would think it would be exactly where it is now. You know,
it would be 9-3 if I told you that Haynes was out, that Marshall was banged up, was coming. Like, there's no way we would have lost some of those games. You would have predicted losses. Yeah,
but also, like, I think the schedule was favorable. Like, Nebraska turned out to be not nearly as good as we thought they were going to be. Right. You know, Central Michigan is a win. New Mexico is a win. Michigan State, one of the worst teams in the conference, if not the worst team in the conference. Northwestern isn't necessarily an all-world beater. Maryland, one of the worst teams in the conference. And so when you looked at the schedule, like even if those things happened on paper, you would still have to favor the Wolverines. And I think that.
But you would expect closer games, right? I mean, I don't think
a lot of them were close. A lot of them were close.
That's what I'm saying. So that's what we got. We got a team that had 6 to 8 freshmen playing that were these kids. Some of these kids were in high school last year. Like, it's a big difference. It is like now I'll tell you this, and you and I texted, I still believe that the experience that they got this year is invaluable.
There's no question.
So year 2 and year 3, that experience is going to be invaluable to them. And I really think that this is going to be a big leap forward. They could go win a bowl game, finish 10-3. That's a 2-game improvement over last year, right? Their offense improved from 20 points a game to 27. You know what I mean? They're averaging 396 yards of offense versus 220. Like, there's been noticeable marked improvements, right? It's just when you get up against really good teams, Oklahoma has an all SEC type defense. They played probably the best defense in the SEC and the best defense in the Big Ten. Yeah, you're going to get shellacked. The USC game, I still don't know what happened. I don't even want to. We both watched that multiple times and still can't figure out how that just went to hell. But I don't know, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 100% not trying to be negative. I just, when I'm being honest, you know, you're telling me, I ask you the question, where outside of Andrew Marsh did you see this passing game improve over 12 weeks? And you tell me that, like, you listen to Jake Butt and like he's going through his progressions a little bit better, but then that fell apart against, you know, some of the good teams. To me, that's not enough of an improvement. And I'm sorry, but this is part of the equation now. And we've talked about this, or at least I've talked about this on previous shows. That things are different now. The expectations are different. And the way college football has transitioned over these last handful of years now, the last 5 years, is that it isn't really an emotional investment thing. Like, this is all transactional now. You have investors and stakeholders into the program that are pouring millions of dollars into NIL so that you can build a championship roster. And true freshmen are not 18 years old, 20 years old, 25 years old, whatever it is. When you pay $12 million for the number one quarterback in the country to come into your program, there's a couple of things. A, I think the expectation is set that this guy's going to be developed and become everything you think he can. But B, if you're going to start him as a true freshman, then you better make damn sure that all the pieces around him offensively are solid as hell. And I think that when you look at the way it played out, did they have some injuries during the season? Sure. But like, I just don't feel like, I guess where I'm at with this is I walk away from it like feeling like we didn't get as much out of this offense as we should. I don't know if it's a Chip Lindsey problem. I don't know if it's a Bryce Underwood development thing. But Jared, when I watch this offense try to pass the ball for 12 weeks and I struggle to find any sort of noticeable improvement, I know that we all think just because they got reps this year that it's inherently going to be better next year. But a big part of that is also on coaching and development and in-game decisions and how you operate your offense and who's going to be available. And I think I just have a lot of questions. I have a lot of questions going into next year. And by the way, the road doesn't get any easier for Michigan next year. In fact, it gets considerably more difficult when you look at who's on the schedule next year. And I think that with that in mind, I guess where I'm at with this, Jared, is I just feel like I knew all season long the passing attack was an issue. I just didn't think that they were leaning on that enough. You lean on the rush game all season long. You pound on these running backs all year long, and then you get down the stretch of the season and you've got injuries with Justice Haynes. You've got injury with Jordan Marshall. You've got Max Bredesen missing a game, and you don't have that other gear as an offense. And that's what I saw on Saturday. I saw an offense that was one-dimensional, was forced into a situation where they had to move the ball through the air, and they couldn't do it. And there's a lot of people that are going to look at it and say, well, the weather, it was cold and it was snowy or whatever. Julian Sayin didn't seem to have an issue with it. I think his completion percentage was like 80% on Saturday. He threw for 280 yards or something like that, a few touchdowns. He didn't seem to struggle with the weather. Ohio State's passing attack didn't seem to struggle with the weather. And what I saw from Ohio State on Saturday is exactly what I want to see from Michigan moving forward. It wasn't like an all-out aerial assault. It wasn't like they were going to the Jeremiah Smith well every single down. It was just nice and balanced, and they moved the ball with ease. That's what I expect to see from this Michigan offense. So how much of that is a product of them being young? Sure, some of it is that. But some of these throws and completions that aren't being made, that are there to be made, it's just almost as if the development isn't quite there. And before you get pissed off at me, not you in particular, Jared, but anybody out there in the comments, it's not just a concern that I share about whether or not the right development is there. Bryce Underwood committed elsewhere early in his recruitment and flat out said he was concerned about the development at the University of Michigan. And Jared, you and I talked that if you put Bryce Underwood in another offense, we think his numbers probably this year would have been considerably better. And so I am a little bit concerned about whether or not the development's going to be there and that we're going to be able to get the most out of Bryce Underwood. And we'll talk about the stakeholders and the investors and the NIL thing maybe later on in the show. But Jared, let me ask you this, you think you're talking about reps are going to be the thing that gets this offense over the hump, that the young offensive line and Bryce Underwood and Andrew Marsh and all these young guys that were getting all these reps this year. How confident are you that the development and the coaching is also going to be there?
So go back to the LSU thing, right? Where Bryce said that. I think he was just trying to calm everything down because he didn't want to deal with all the rumors that he was coming to Michigan, not coming to Michigan. He wanted that to be dead, right? He made a couple comments throughout that whole recruiting thing. That he made a comment about Carter Smith when he committed, laughing emojis and things. I think that was just a little bit of him just trying to kill the noise and say, I'm committed to LSU, because at that time, Harbaugh wasn't even trying to recruit the guy. Harbaugh was going to the NFL, not going to the NFL. That was a whole mess. And Nussmeier, their quarterback, didn't do so hot this year at LSU, and I believe their coach got fired. So, you know what I mean? Apples and oranges, I guess, whatever. But I look at all these quarterbacks of every level. You get a guy, Peyton Manning, all world in college, goes obviously to a crappy Indianapolis Colts team. I get it, but throws 29 picks. And he's talked about it. The game sped up. I couldn't see things the way I saw things in college. It wasn't the same. I was the big fish in the small pond in college. Then I go to the big, right? So Bryce is coming from being the big fish at Belleville, where he could his talent could overcome any of his deficiencies. That's another problem. I don't know the whole backstory of Bryce Underwood. Did he have a legitimate quarterback coach? What did he really do in the offseason? Was he maybe resting a little bit on his overwhelming talent and ability at times? You know what I mean? So we don't know how fully developed he was when he came to Michigan. You and I talked about the quarterback room. He won. Like you said, he won the competition. Yeah, he did. There's nobody in there that could have beat him. I mean, Jaden Davis, love the kid. His throwing arm, his motion is insane to me. It's like a wind.
Okay, but okay, so this is a part of it, right? We're talking about how long has Jaden Davis been in the program? 2 years, right? He's been in the program 2 years, and we're still sitting here talking about the throwing motion. So even that is a concern to me. This guy, depending on what recruiting service you looked at, Jaden Davis at one point in time was like a borderline 5-star, high 4-star quarterback coming out. I'm just saying.
What happened though?
I understand. I get all of that. But
sure, throwing motion.
Sure, and that's fine. But he's still committed to the University of Michigan. They still brought him into the program. He's been in the program now for 2 years. And last year, keep in mind what was happening with the quarterback situation with Davis Warren and Jack Tuttle and Alex Orji. Michigan could not move the ball through the air, and yet they would not go to Jaden Davis. They wouldn't even give him an opportunity to throw the ball. And when you watch him in the warm-ups, and again, this is not a personal thing, but when you watch in the warm-ups, the mechanics don't look any more improved in year two than they look before he even got to the program. So that's what I'm saying, like quarterback development. Like, wouldn't you think that after 2 years in the program, some of that stuff would have been worked through and that you'd see an improvement in his mechanics? But you don't really see that. The other part is like talking about last year and what went wrong in the quarterback room. You could see cycling through quarterbacks. You could see not having an option. And when I talked about Bryce Underwood, making sure that you've got other pieces in place, I can see it in the comments. There are people that are saying maybe it would have been better if Mikey Keene had been healthy to lean on Mikey Keene or whatever, but you didn't have Mikey Keene. So when you looked at the way the quarterback room was shaking out, your only option, your only realistic viable option going into this year after the quarterback debacle from last year was a true freshman, 18-year-old Bryce Underwood. That was it. That was the only viable option. In year one, given the circumstances, you could give Sharon Moore a free pass because things were just kind of wonky in terms of the way that Harbaugh left and there wasn't a lot of time and blah, 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 blah. But going into year two, to have your only legitimate option be 18-year-old Bryce Underwood, to me is like a bit of an issue. And when you start him right out of the gate, and I mean, we can Monday morning quarterback this all day long. Like, was it the right call to start him out of the gate? Should you have tried to like go to a veteran? Should you have tried to find another way? Because once you start Bryce Underwood, you're not polling him. It's a $12 million quarterback, 5-star, number one prospect in the country. If he's your starting quarterback out of the gate, you're committed to that all season long. And so, I don't know, Jared, was that the right move?
Well, here's the thing. And you know, I'm way nothing against you in your knowledge. I'm way more into the recruiting side than you are.
Sure.
A lot of this. I really get really into it. And I heard rumors back in the offseason that a lot of veteran type quarterbacks didn't want to come here because they didn't want Bryce Underwood sitting behind him. Because you know what this fan base would have done? 2 interceptions.
There's no question.
Where's Bryce? And who the hell wants to come to that? So that's Sharon's got that against him too. You got a $12 million guy sitting there. I know if I make a mistake, I lose a game, anything, I'm out. And who wants to go there for their senior year for that? You know what I'm saying? It's just not there, you know? And think about the other thing, going back to development. Arch Manning, all world. He was the dude coming out of high school, right? He was going to go to Texas, be the man, sat 2 years behind Quinn Ewers, came up against this Ohio State defense and looked ridiculous. He looked terrible. Everybody was like, what? Who is this? Kid? This kid's trash.
Mechanics looked off, you know?
Everything.
I'm not a quarterback guru, but his mechanics looked off in that week.
And why? And why? Sped up. The defense sped him up. You watched that game we were talking about. He started doing this sidearm crap because he just wanted to get rid of the ball. So what does he do? He goes back to his bad mechanics of when he was a high school kid and he could get away with things like that. And he was missing everybody. But this defense, Ohio State's, sped him up. And this is a kid that's, you know, supposed to be the same as Bryce Underwood, right? Almost a perfect rating. You know, he was going to win a Heisman. He was the dude. And he struggled, you know, and he doesn't have the reps. And I think, to me, it matters. I think that if you didn't have Bryce out there, I don't think we win 9 games. I think we lose a couple of these other close games. You know what I mean? And then what do you got? Now you got everybody on the podcast saying fire Sharon because he should have started Bryce.
Yeah. Even with
the very beginning.
Do you think with a healthy Mikey Keene, a veteran, a guy who's thrown for over 8,000 yards in his career, do you think a healthy Mikey Keene, things look a little bit different offensively? Or do you think that, to your point just now, it was Bryce Underwood? It had to be him.
I don't think so. Because another point that you and I were talking about is the wide receiver room. I think that Ohio State's wide receiver 3, Brandon Ennis, is our wide receiver 1, even over Marsh from what he did. You know what I mean? Granted, Marsh showed up late. He had some good games, but I don't think, other than Marsh, I don't think any of our receivers even see the field if they're down in Columbus. They're special teams guys. So you got your 5-star throwing to guys who would be on special teams on the other team.
Right.
That matters. That does matter too, right?
Like, that is a big part of this. And that's why I said, like, if you're going to start your true freshman quarterback, you better make damn sure that you've got the necessary weapons around him, that you're putting him in a position to succeed. And so
anybody else to start though.
I hope, but who is that on? Who is that on? Right.
I agree. It should be on the coach, but I'm telling you what was happening.
I mean, we had wide receivers. Let's not forget in the first, 4 or 5 weeks of the season, Michigan their wide receivers were dropping balls left and right. And you had Ron Bellamy. Well, okay, so there's a part of that, but you also had Ron Bellamy putting them on the jugs machine saying, hey, we got to get back to the fundamentals and learn how to catch a ball.
Was alarming.
It's like, what the hell are we talking about? Teaching the wide receivers at the University of Michigan, like the proper techniques on how to catch a football? Like, you need to know that. if you commit to the University of Michigan and you step foot on the field. And a lot of those guys some of those guys that were in a starting position, like, dude, the wide receiver thing is plowed ground. Like, we kind of know what happened there. Thank God for Andrew Marsh and making the most of his opportunities. But yeah, I mean, what happened to Marlon Klein? Donovan McCulley was like kind of hit or miss sort of guy. Yeah. And then you get beyond that, and it's like there's really not much there for Bryce Underwood to work with. And then, things do start to speed up. And against Northwestern, you're trying to force the issue, and you throw a couple of picks down the stretch. And so I just think there's a reason why, Jared, we're not spending any time talking about Michigan's rushing attack, because we know it now. We have known it for years. Michigan can run the football. And the offensive line, I guess if you're talking about offensively where some improvements were made, you could see as the season progressed, the offensive line was getting better in that respect. Yeah. And when you had a healthy Justice Haynes and you had a healthy Jordan Marshall, Michigan was elite in running the ball. And there's a reason why Savion Hyder is coming to Ann Arbor, because he wants to be a part of that. Michigan is going to be able to run the ball moving forward. That is not a concern. But I just don't think this offense can get from where it is to where it needs to be unless you're willing and able to make significant improvements in the pass attack. And when you go from week 1 to week 12 and you sit back and you can say, well, I guess maybe Bryce Underwood is like seeing progressions a little bit better. I'm thinking like, dude, that's not enough. That's not enough of an improvement. Not when you make that kind of investment into your quarterback. You need to see more improvement. Bottom line.
And whatever, for a kid with as much experience as he has, that is enough. Because I don't care how much you pay a kid. That doesn't make them better. And as a fan, if you're looking at this kid and saying, well, we, which you didn't, somebody, which they did, gave you this money, you should be better. That money doesn't make you better. That's why Reggie Bush got his Heisman back, because the NCAA finally realized Reggie Bush was just awesome. It didn't matter that his parents got a free house. Reggie Bush was still going to win the Heisman if his parents lived in a shack. Giving the kid money doesn't make him better. Now, do the fans who somehow think they pay these NIL bills think that the kid should be better because he makes money?
Some of them do. I mean, some of them do. I mean, you're talking to fans that pay $150 a ticket to go to, autograph signings that used to be free. You've got families that are investing, I don't know, $700 to go sit in the big house on a fall Saturday if they want to go as a family. I mean, you do have fans that are pouring hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars over the course of a season into this program. Now, I get it. They're not pulling $1 million out of their pocket. And I'm not saying that NIL inherently makes a player better. What I'm saying is that NIL raises the expectation. That's what I'm saying.
It shouldn't. I don't know why would it?
Why wouldn't it? You're telling me,
what about me getting paid makes me a better athlete, or makes you as a fan expect me to be better? If you just break down the sport in general, right? If we're looking at football, there's a reason that you can't go to the NFL until you've been in college or out of high school for 3 years, because the NFL knows you're not going to be ready. There's also, you got to, if you can do the math, then that equates to the Division I as well, right? So these kids, when was the last time a true freshman took their team to a national championship as a quarterback? It's never happened. And there's a reason for that.
I don't know that national championship.
I'm going out on a limb, and I'm hoping I'm right on that. But if it has happened, we would know. I think we would know. There'd probably be a Disney movie about it and all that nonsense, right?
There is Rudy. No, he wasn't a quarterback. Never mind.
Rudy was a walk-on. You're killing me, man.
Rudy didn't have any NIL. No, and that's why it was such a feel-good story. That's why it was easy to root for Rudy, because he was a walk-on that had to bust his ass and make shit happen. There wasn't anybody that was like, I'm not going to go down the Rudy path here. That could go into the weeds real quick. But I am saying, when there is millions of dollars invested into a roster, for better or worse, this is where college football is now, and it does raise the expectation. And I'll use, like, if you're an investor, like, let's say you're Larry Ellison, I'm sure it's like stocks, right? Like, maybe you're not getting a return on the investment year one, but Jared, I'm telling you right now, they expect a return on their investment while Bryce Underwood is wearing the winged helmet. There's no question about that. But don't you think that when you invest $30-40 million into a roster, that it's fair to expect a return on that investment, that it's fair to expect? Like, think about Cody Campbell down at Texas Tech, right? Texas Tech right now is projected to be number 4 in the college football playoff rankings, get a first-round bye, basically went out, he's an oil tycoon, bought the entire roster, brought in a bunch of transfers down to Lubbock. Like, I'm sorry, but Lubbock is not like a hotbed for recruiting. There aren't a bunch of people around the country that are trying to flee like Miami or someplace in Florida nice so they can go play college football in Lubbock, right? There was a lot of money that was poured into that program. I get it. It's the Big 12. It's a bit of a different conference. But the bottom line is that team is 11-1 and sitting in a place right now where they're going to play for a Big 12 championship and potentially a first round bye in the college football playoff. And I think that was the expectation for Texas Tech. So I don't think that there's, what the hell is this? Oh my God. See, sometimes I see stuff like this and it throws me off. I love big.
Nothing. I mean, I'm not arguing with the guy.
More power to you.
Hold on real quick to the fans. Trevor Lawrence, you guys were correct. And then there was another young man, Jameel Holloway in 1985. So 2 true freshman quarterbacks in history of NCAA football. Thank you for correcting me, fans. I knew they would. But so 2 in the history, right? But that Clemson team was also stacked. I just, the other thing that we're not talking about, how terrible was that defensive line, which was full of seniors, grad seniors? Like what?
Michigan's defensive line?
Yeah, they didn't do anything to do
wasn't great.
But we're putting it all on Bryce and the passing attack.
No. But that's the thing. We haven't even started talking about the defense yet.
Well, let's transition then, because they were poor.
The defense was not. But here's what I'll say. Also, when your offense can't put up points, when you don't have a true threat offensively, what do you think that does to a defense? And you talked about it. They got veteran guys on that defense. That's defense, even though they're inconsistent, does show up, does make big plays, does give Michigan, for the most part, a chance to win every single Saturday. But when your offense can't deliver, what do you think that does to a defense? And so I do think that's a problem. Look, I get it. There's no perfect answer and there's no perfect solution here. But what I'm saying is, when I sit back and I look at this Michigan offense from week 1 to week 12, the running game was good from start to finish for the most part until the injuries started to pile up. But the running game was never an issue. To me, this was all about the passing attack. What's Bryce Underwood going to do? What's the development going to look like? And I just didn't see the development year 1. I understand that he's young. I understand he's a true freshman. I understand that he had to face some elite defensive units. I understand that he's 18 years old. But I also understand that he is the starting quarterback at the University of Michigan. In spite of all of those other things, he's your QB1. He's your starter. And for me to sit back and say, as a fan watching it play out, it just didn't look that much better week 12 than I saw week 1. That's a little bit concerning. And when you talk about the QB development, I know we mentioned Jaden Davis. Again, this was something that Bryce Underwood mentioned, right? Concern about the quarterback development. Dude, Jared, go down the list here. JJ McCarthy in the NFL, he was a first-round pick, won a national championship. I think we would all agree JJ wasn't asked to do a ton as a quarterback, right? He was able to lean on an NFL caliber offensive line and NFL caliber rushing attack. He did make great plays. He was deserving of being a first round draft pick. I don't have any question about that. Struggling a little bit at the next level, but seems like he's working through it. But go through some of the other quarterbacks. Where's Cade McNamara right now? He completely fell off the map. Alex Orji, Davis Warren, Jack Tuttle, Wilton Spite, John O'Korn, Brandon Peters, Shea Patterson, Joe Milton. Like, you go down the list of these quarterbacks and you start to get a picture of, yeah, maybe there's not a ton of development here. There's a lot of quarterbacks that have been QB1 in Ann Arbor that like just sort of faded away and weren't up to the task. We hope and believe that Bryce Underwood is going to be different and that they're going to put the resources in place to develop him. But I think this year it didn't do a lot to sort of push back against that narrative when it comes to lack of development in the quarterback spot. Is that at least a fair assessment that what you saw this season wasn't a strong rebuke of like, they don't develop quarterbacks in Ann Arbor?
I mean, I didn't expect the kid to throw 20 touchdowns. I mean, I thought he'd throw for 2,500 yards. He's at 2,200. I thought he'd throw about 15 touchdowns. He's at 9. I think he's got 6 picks. I didn't really go through the picks in my head, but I thought he'd go for 2,515, and he's at 2,209. I mean, the touchdowns are a little bit concerning, like you said, but they also had such a strong run game. And then you look at especially the Ohio State game. If I'm Matt Patricia and Michigan's down to their running back 3, what am I going to tell my defense? Just pin your ears back and go after this kid. He is 18. Let's go light him up. They got no running game now. They got like the strength of your offense is gone. You know what I mean? You're down to the 3rd string, no star, Ada Michigan guy who's a good news story because he put up 100 yards against Maryland, who can't beat Michigan State. You know what I'm saying? So I think a lot of things, there's a lot of small factors, right? Michigan or football, the famous is a game of inches, right? And anything that you give up in a gladiatorial game like football, if you give up any strength, which Michigan gave up a lot, right? I see somebody here talking about Babalola. Like, I think he probably would have been a starting tackle.
I don't think there's any question, given the struggles they had on the offensive line.
So you lost that guy right off the bat. Like, Ty Haywood hasn't really panned out yet, but he's a freshman. We'll give him some time. You know, it's the other part that I don't like is there's other guys that are getting paid on this team too. Maybe not $12 million, but we're not saying, well, you just didn't perform well. Quarterback is the most difficult position to play in any sport, all sports, all positions. I don't care what anybody says. You know, Tom Brady has talked about it at length. It is the most, because if anything goes wrong, it's your fault. And if it goes right, they're like, well, yeah, you should. That's how it should have went. You know what I mean? And
or you get all the credit when it goes right.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. And then
you're getting the shine, you're getting the big paycheck, you're getting all the face time, you're getting
throwing the ball to guys that Julian Sayin will never have to throw the ball to. You know what I mean? He'll never have to throw to that. And I'm going to say that low level of talent that Bryce Underwood had to deal with all year. And then probably one of his most skilled guys out the gate, Marlon Klein, just disappears. I don't know what happened, if he fell in love or what happened. He just disappeared and just, you know what I mean? He was named to the freaks list. Like team
captain, Bruce Feldman's freaks. I mean, you know, he was supposed to be the next man up from Colston Loveland and
disappeared. And a young quarterback, any offensive minded coordinator or anything, what's a young quarterback's, okay, I'd say his second best asset. One is having a good run game. Two, a tight end, right? So that because they're running those short routes, you can get rid of it when things get sped up. You know where that tight end is. Well, Marlon Klein just didn't get on the bus. You know what I mean? I don't know.
But that's the thing, though. There was never an easy point A to point B for Bryce Underwood. Mm-hmm. And in the times where he had it, he rushed the throw. He was putting a lot on it. I still think that's a bit. You know, if you want to slam Bryce Underwood for putting too much on the ball, I kind of think it's bullshit. You're a D1 wide receiver or tight end, catch the damn ball. 100%. But also, like, that does need to be coached into him, right? That there's times where you need to put a lot on it, and there's times where you got to just kind of float it out there. That's part of the development thing. But I think overall, that's where I'm at, is like, it just never really looked easy. Even the plays that they were making through the air, it was like, holy shit, I didn't see that coming, or where did that come from? It was so few and far in between and inconsistent. That's my biggest issue, is we never got to a point this year where there was just some consistency through the air, something that you could count on that was reliable from week to week. Andrew Marsh started to become that toward the end of the season, but then again, like, wasn't even targeted against Ohio State. So how much of that is on Bryce Underwood? How much of that is on the receivers? How much of that is on the coaching staff? I think there's enough to go around. But at the end of the day, you can go ask the guys inside of Schembechler Hall right now, and they will tell you that being ranked number 100 in the country in pass offense is not good enough. And that's exactly where I'm at. It just wasn't good enough. I get true freshmen. I get development. I get all of that. But at the end of the day, there was never anything that you could fully rely on in this passing attack through 12 weeks in the season. And I think that's what frustrates me the most about it. Here's what I want to do. I want to run this commercial from VFW National Home, one of our sponsors here. They do incredible work. We're going to run the commercial, and then we're going to come back. Look, we spent 48 minutes just talking about the passing attack. My goodness, I was concerned. I thought we might have enough for tonight's show. Let me do this. Let me run the commercial. Jared, you got a little bit of, what is that, whiskey there that you're drinking?
Yes, sir. I knew I needed it for you.
We will run the commercial. We'll come back. I want to talk about the post-game stuff. You know, there's some things there I want to unpack. We'll try to get to some of the comments in here. I'm hoping that we can get to the Sharon Moore thing before we get out of here. That's a lot to try to pack in here. But let me run this commercial, and then we'll be right back in about 60 seconds.
Next story takes us to Eaton Rapids, Michigan.
Eaton Rapids is the site of the Veterans of Foreign Wars home. The home has been in existence since 1925 and is a fully equipped community.
When I was 10 years old, we had some unfortunate things happen in my family, and we ended up being homeless. My mother's friend told her about a place called the VFW National Home. It was the first time that I had real stability in my childhood.
Very few people outside of the state of Michigan understand that this is a place where veterans from all over the United States can go and get help that they need.
The military does a great job of creating soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen. What they don't do is they don't create good veterans. That's the VFW National Home's job. That's what we do.
All right. Once again, that was a message from VFW National Home. Please check them out. I mean, go to their website. I think it's vfwnationalhome.org. Is that correct, Jared?
Correct.
Go to their website, learn about what they do. You know, VFW National Home is all about helping veterans get back on their feet. So these are the people that go out, you know, they spend their entire lives, you know, protecting this country and all the things that make it great. And, you know, sometimes you need help getting back on your feet, whether it be housing, whether it be finances, whether it be, you know, childcare, all of this stuff. VFW National Home is a phenomenal resources for veterans. So again, you can go to the website, you can support them financially. If you are a veteran out there in need of support, please, please, please visit VFW National Home. You know, if they can't do anything for you, they can certainly get you in the right spot there. But dude, Jared, they do a lot of stuff out there. So I'm quite certain that if you're a veteran and you need resources, that's the place to go.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's do this. Because we have been going so long about the offense, I want to talk about the post-game shenanigans. I think that in this game, you know, everybody was sort of curious how it was going to play out, especially when it became apparent, you know, that things weren't going to go the way that Michigan fans would hope. And, you know, by the way, we're talking about giving people props, giving people flowers. I want to give Ryan Day his flowers here. Ryan Day, finally ended his 4-game losing streak to Michigan. He improved his losing record to 2-4 in the rivalry, and he gave Ohio State its first win over the Wolverines since 2019. So kudos to Ryan Day. The losing record looks a little bit better as of today after Saturday. But at the end of the day, once this thing went sideways, everybody was sort of curious based on how last year went. What is this post game between the Wolverines and the Buckeyes going to look like? It largely was uneventful, but there were some things that popped up that I just kind of want to get your thoughts on, Jared. Number one, first thing, Michigan guarding the block M at the 50-yard line. You know, the Wolverines were taking a lot of flack for that online, social media, not just from fans, but from members of the media of Ohio State as well. Folks that cover the Buckeyes. Michigan getting a lot of shit for protecting the block M. What were your thoughts when you saw that?
What were they mad because they were too dumb to do it last year? Because they ran off. They should have stayed and protected their own block.
There's a narrative out there that it's hypocritical, that it's a soft move for Michigan. I'm just curious, like when you saw the pictures come out of Michigan defending midfield, what were your thoughts?
I think you
got it.
We froze for a minute there. No, I didn't have a problem with it. Whatever. I'm over the post-game bullshit anyways. Like, if you lose the game and somebody plants a flag, they plant the flag. You lost the game. If you want to defend the block M so they don't plant it, that's part of the game too. My biggest thing was, honestly, what Ryan Day said to Sharon Moore. And I think
we're going to get into that.
That's all I care. Blocking the block M, I don't care. Because if Ohio State had done it last year, you know what I would have said? Good for them. It's their field. I don't care.
And we do have some Buckeyes in the comments tonight, which is fine. I mean,
yeah,
you know, it's helping out financially. So thank you for your contributions to the analytics. It never hurts to get called a stupid bastard on a live podcast. I'm fine, Jared. It's not the first time today it's happened, and it won't be the last. Here's my thought on that. I find it interesting that Ohio State fans and even some of the folks in the media that cover Ohio State were trying to clown Michigan for guarding the 50-yard line, considering what happened last year. And let's not get it twisted here that if Michigan was allowed to celebrate at midfield in Columbus in 2024, the way that they were able to celebrate in 2022, which is without incident, you probably don't see Michigan guarding the 50-yard line in 2025 after losing to Ohio State. You probably see Michigan go to the locker room. But Ohio State set that precedent last year, right? Michigan wasn't able to celebrate and do it without issue in Columbus. Why? Because Ryan Day couldn't control his players, because the Buckeyes decided to go fight the Wolverines at the 50-yard line. So what did you think was going to happen this year when Michigan loses? Did you think they were just going to tuck their tail and go up the tunnel? Hell no. They weren't able to celebrate on your field last year in peace. So why would they give you that same courtesy this year? The fact that Ohio State people, like, I guess I shouldn't be surprised that they don't understand that, but the fact that that's not registering, Michigan standing on the 50-yard line wasn't a Michigan thing. That was a tone that Ohio State set last year, and all the Wolverines were doing was saying, hey, we'll return the favor. Like, if you're going to come try to plant something here, like, we're ready to throw down as well. Like, that was what I took away from it.
Yeah, no, because what did Ohio State do last year? You're right. They came back and defended the O. Like, that's what they were doing. They grabbed the flag. They did all the same bullshit. Michigan just said, hey, game's over. We're standing here. They didn't leave and then come running back and start crying about they're not playing. I think Jack Sawyer cried a little bit.
There's no doubt that there were tears behind that. We can't let them plant the flag on our field. There's no doubt that he screamed that through tears.
Precious.
But another part of this, and I think that's even a bigger part of it, because you're right, Jared. Like, the post game shit it's kind of stupid, right? It's good for clicks and it's good for attention.
I wasn't even watching anymore. I'm done.
Right. And I felt the same way. I didn't stick around for it. There was a part of me that was like, I should stick around for this. I should have my camera ready in case some shit goes sideways. But dude, it was cold. I'm like, you know what? I don't care. I just don't care what these guys are going to do after the game. But here's something that did take place over after the game that, listen, man, I'm struggling more with this than I'm struggling with anything I saw in 4 quarters of play. And that is the video that surfaced of Ryan Day calling over Sharon Moore after the midfield handshake, right? The coaches are out there. They're just trying to make sure we don't have a repeat of last year. And Ryan Day calls over to Sharon Moore and says, hey, come on, Sharon, come over here, and says something to the effect of, look, we're not going to plant the flag out here, but you need to get your guys off the field if you want to avoid a problem. And what does Sharon Moore do in response? He looks at Ryan Day and he says, I got you. And he turns to his players and he proceeds to get them off the field. Jared, out of any play call, out of any, clock management thing this year, out of any head scratcher this year, when I saw that video, I was irate. Let me just get your take on that. I mean, you see that play out on the video, you hear that exchange. What's going through your mind?
If I'm Sharon Moore, what would I have said in return? Is that what you want to know?
Correct. Yeah, we could go that direction.
I would have said, go F yourself. Literally what I would have said. This is our house. You get off the field. I don't care if you want or not. You're not telling me to leave my own crib. That's not happening. I don't care. And I think if he would have said that, Michigan fans would have loved it. I think secretly Ohio State fans would have loved it, because that's this rivalry, right? To just say, I got you. No, what? No. Now who's soft? Like, I thought that was a soft thing to say. But caught up in the heat of the moment, Sharon might just want to avoid the nonsense. But also, if you dig deeper into that, for me, what I heard was another coach, Ryan Day, say, I can't control my team. If your guys don't leave, I don't have control of this team. Just like last year, I'm going to lose control of these kids who I'm supposed to be in charge of. That's what he was admitting to me.
Yeah, that's 100% what I took from it. There's a couple different things here. One, Sharon Moore did the right thing. I think that let's just get that out there.
I would have done the wrong thing, but
correct. And that's why you and I, because I'm a hothead, you're a hothead. That's why we're not in that position. Sharon Moore did the right thing. You could see, however, in that video, Sharon Moore, as Ryan Day's turning away, Sharon Moore keeps his eyes locked on Ryan Day, and you could just see it probably took everything within him not to respond the way that guys like you and I thought he should have responded. But Jared, since we're talking about ways that we would have responded, I'm 100% in lockstep with you. Here you have Ryan Day, the same Ryan Day who, by the way, stood on his field last year and watched his players run to midfield and start a fight that was so bad that police had to get involved. People were pepper sprayed at midfield. He stood there like a deer in the headlights, like a statue, just watching this whole thing take place. So fast forward it last Saturday in Columbus. Where does this guy get the nerve to walk up to Sharon Moore and say, hey, you got to get your players off the field if you want to avoid an issue? Where the hell were you last year, Ryan Day? And I think if I'm Sharon Moore, that's what I would have said. Like, it's not my problem. You can't control your guys. This is our field. You're in Ann Arbor. If you want to avoid a problem, take your ass to the bus. We're not going anywhere. That's how I would have responded. The fact that Ryan Day felt comfortable enough to tell Sharon Moore to control his guys, get him off the field, and Sharon Moore obliged, that rubbed me the wrong way. That even though it was the right thing to do to avoid further conflict, I think that is a moment in this rivalry that cannot be forgotten, particularly if you're Sharon Moore. You cannot let a rival coach who stood by and watched his players, attempt to beat the shit out of you at the midfield in Columbus. You can't let that guy come up to you and say, hey man, you got to do this X, Y, and Z with your players. That's when you tell the guy respectfully, like, I appreciate what you're trying to do here, but if you want to avoid a problem, you take your ass to the bus. And I have been shooting photos for now a number of years. There is protocol at Michigan Stadium that the visiting team goes up the tunnel first and Michigan is held out. So the fact that the Wolverines were standing on the field, I hate to break it to anybody in Columbus who like kind of isn't familiar with how things work. Michigan always hangs out on the field after the game and lets the visiting team go up the tunnel first because you're trying to avoid what happened against Michigan State where you've got two teams. So there's a protocol in place. There's a reason why Michigan was hanging back. I just dude, that rubbed me the wrong way, man. Ryan Day, and then he gets on this high horse after, we're going to do it. We're going to do it with class. We're not going to do this, and we're not going to. Dude, you're standing on the field telling Sharon Moore to get his guys off the field. You got to know where you're at, and you got to understand what happened last year. And Michigan isn't hanging out possibly looking for a problem if your guys didn't cause that last year. So I thought it was hypocritical. I thought it was a tough video to watch. I'll put it that way. I really struggled with that one. But at the end of the day, to the victor goes the spoils. And for this year, it's Ohio State. And fortunately, for them, they were able to get back on the winning side and make things, I guess, a little more interesting. Because, Jared, it does get boring when the rivalry is so one-sided for so long. So it was good to see Ohio State, I guess, be able to get back and make it competitive. And hopefully Michigan can return the favor next year in Columbus. I
got to point out, I love that now the Ohio State fans are on the podcast and they're here for the whole show. It's awesome that they show up after a win, but nothing before. We didn't. And you know where you would never catch me on this rivalry? In a freaking Ohio State podcast. Never. I don't know. You'd never catch me in there. Period. We win or lose. Never. It makes me laugh.
Well, you know what? They've earned the right. They've earned the right to come and talk their shit, and so you got to let them do it. And we
donate
know
to the VFW National Home while you're here.
There you go. While you're here, donate to VFW National Home. At least make it worth your while. Here's what I want to do to sort of end the show, and we don't have to necessarily, we don't have to spend a ton of time on this, but I am curious. 9-3. We've talked about it. It is. Hold on a second. I want to get this comment beforehand. I just kind of read a little bit of it. I want to get it. Let's go with Buck Commander 8. The problem is planting the flag is disrespectful. You guys did it last year and didn't want it to happen to you because you lost for 20 years. Couple of things on that. Number one, planting the flag is disrespectful. I don't think there's any question about that. I agree with you. Planting the flag is disrespectful. But why did Michigan not want it to happen this year? That's what you have to ask yourself. Why was Michigan at midfield this year? Is it because Michigan wanted to dish it but couldn't take it? Or is it because when Michigan did it, they were met at midfield by Ohio State guys that were ready to fight? Why wouldn't Michigan take the same approach the following year? That to me is the confusing thing that I think you don't understand. Of course, flag planting is disrespectful, but I also watched Texas come into the big house last year and run and plant their flag at midfield. And guess what? There wasn't a single soul from Michigan that did anything about it. And so this isn't a thing about flag planting. This is a thing about Ohio State, and in particular, Ryan Day couldn't control his players, and it got out of control last year. And so I think Michigan was willing to return the favor. If you can't understand that and you can't admit that, I can't help you. I agree. Planting the flag is disrespectful.
And we were on a 4-game winning streak going into this game, so I don't know how we lost the last 20 years. But
well, that's the selective memory down there. There's something in the water, but all the shit flows south from Michigan. So
that's true. You're welcome.
Let's talk about man. It would be full-blooded Buckeyes. Jesus Christ,
that's funny.
All right, let's do the Sharon Moore conversation. I am curious. Sharon Moore, you 8-5 last year. You beat Ohio State to finish the year. You beat Alabama. There's a lot of optimism coming into this year. You feel good about landing Bryce Underwood. You feel good about the recruiting. You feel good about a lot of things that are happening with the program. But I said earlier in the show that 9-3 just doesn't, this 9-3 just doesn't feel great. And you're trying to sort of figure out how you're supposed to feel. Where does Sharon Moore fit in the mix? How much pressure does he have next year? So I'm going to ask you that in a 2-part question. Jared, give me your, overall grade, thoughts on the performance from head coach Sharon Moore this year. And going into next year, is he or should he be on the hot seat in 2026?
Man, that's a tough grade to give somebody. to get, I mean, from where we were at last year to where he's at, right? Saw a quarterback problem, went out and addressed it, got some guys in the transfer portal. I thought he did a great job getting some defensive linemen who just, unfortunately, nothing against these kids, didn't really pan out. They just didn't have the impact that I thought they were going to. You and I talked about some of these guys, Trey Pierce, and how big they were, and like, these guys are going to maul people, and they just weren't impact players. I think I got to give him like a B-. That's kind of where I'm at. Like, I don't want to do a cop-out C grade. I give him a B-. Won the games he was supposed to win. Didn't win the games that I think he was going to win. So kind of did what I expected him to do. And then next year, man,
is he
schedule, my friend?
Is he on the hot seat next year? And should he be on the hot seat next year? Those are
if things go south quick, he could be.
I'm saying going into the year. Does Sharon Moore going into the year, does Sharon Moore enter the 2026 season on the hot seat? Should he enter the season on the hot seat?
It's going to be warm. I mean, coming in with that, I think it also depends what he does in the portal. If he goes out and gets some studs, we pull a Nick Marsh, rebuild that team to where there's no excuses. Like, okay, now you got legitimate receivers for Underwood. Yeah. But I also know the Michigan fan base. I mean,
listen, you've got Oklahoma. What's that?
Never mind. You're good. Good. Go ahead.
You've got, so just looking at the schedule next year, you've got Oklahoma, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan State, Penn State, at Oregon, at Ohio State. I mean, and that's not the entire schedule, but again, Oklahoma, Indiana, Penn State, at Oregon, at Ohio State. You know, if there's not significant improvements, those are all losable football games. Those are all losable football games.
I would say Indiana, Oklahoma, Penn State are all going to have a totally revamped offenses, right? Their quarterbacks are going to be gone.
There's no reason at this point to believe that they won't be solid.
Understood, but they're going to, I mean, they're not going to be, they're not, you can't compare them to this year. You know what I mean? I don't think that Indiana team's going to be as good this year or next year as they were this year. I don't think that Oklahoma is going to be as, John Mateer was a Heisman candidate when we ran up against them. I think Penn State was loaded and just fell apart. They're going to be rebuilding with that program. They don't even have a coach yet. So they're already falling way behind in the recruiting and transfer portal stuff. We've seen that happen with Michigan. So while still blue blood, scary programs, could be a totally different team. I think we'll have more returning players than any of those three teams will have, but especially key positions. Ohio State, and you're in Columbus, and they're bringing back. I don't know who they're not bringing back.
Ohio State's going to be very good next year.
Some defensive guys are gone. They were a little bit. They had some experience on this defensive side, and God, if they go through and win another one,
they just reload. I mean, that's what Ohio State does. And that's why.
And Michigan's doing that now. Sharon's reloading, and you got it. That's my problem, though. College football, it's not like in the NFL when you fire a guy, you get to keep your players. Like we know, if Dan Campbell got fired tomorrow, we still have Goff, we still have St. Brown, you fire a coach, you lose the recruits, the transfer portal opens immediately, like, and you're back to squares. I mean, if we fire Sharon next year, Ohio State beats us for the next 5 years.
I mean, that's
you're going to lose so many guys.
Possibly. It depends, though. Michigan is a for sure top 3 job in the country. You could make a strong argument that it's top 3 in the. I mean, there's nothing that you could want as a head coach here in Ann Arbor that you're not able to get from a resources standpoint. And so, whether it's NIL dollars, whether it's facilities, whatever it is,
but they never hire correctly, Chris. They got this friggin' Michigan man mentality. You and I know it.
I understand that, and
we both agreed. I think we were on the page that Sharon shouldn't have been hired, right? We should have maybe.
No, I thought he was the guy.
You did? You did?
I'm still in that camp. I don't want there to be any confusion about that. I'm not on the fire.
Look for somebody else.
No, I'm not on the fire Sharon Moore train.
No, I'm not saying fire him. I'm saying when he got hired from when Harbaugh left. You didn't think they should have done a little bit of looking at all?
No,
I at least thought they should have looked.
No, because I thought he had been in the program for a while. He was a rising star. There was talk about him potentially getting interest from other programs and the idea of him leaving. I thought that Sharon Moore gave Michigan the best opportunity for continuity, and coming off of a national championship season, that was one thing you wanted to keep is let's keep that championship culture. Let's keep, because Jared, you talk about it, right? You lose a guy, transfer portal opens, you don't know who you're going to be able to retain, but Sharon Moore pretty much retained everybody, right?
We didn't.
Well, yeah. I mean, You had
Mason
Derek
Graham,
Moore, you had Rayshon Benny, you had Mason Graham, you had Kenneth Grant, you had Will Johnson. You had a lot of guys that could have gone elsewhere that chose to stay at Michigan and play for Sharon Moore. So I thought that was the best move. I'm not going to Monday morning quarterback that, but I am going to say that for better or worse, right or wrong, Sharon Moore will enter the season in 2026 on the hot seat. I don't think there's any question about that.
Warm. Hot or warm? You're saying hot right off the bat. Okay.
Hot seat.
I'm going warm.
Because here's where we're at now in college football. We are at a place where, I said this earlier in the show, I've said it a number of times. This is a transactional industry. This is about return on your investment. And if you're the head coach at the University of Michigan and you've got donors and you've got stakeholders and you've got people that are pouring and funneling millions of dollars into your program, they are going to expect a return on that investment. And in today's era of college football, if you're the head coach at the University of Michigan and you cannot get this program into the playoff in 3 consecutive years, I feel like you're going to be out. I just don't feel like you're going to have the type of time that guys like Jim Harbaugh had. Like, I don't think you're going to get 5 or 6 years to get over the hump in this era of college football, because in one offseason, and you saw this from Indiana, in one offseason, you can build a championship roster that's fully capable of competing with the best that college football has to offer. So certainly at the University of Michigan, that's also going to be the expectation. I want Sharon Moore to succeed. The interactions I've had with him, he's been nice. He's been kind to my family. I just think I want to see him succeed. But at the end of the day, somebody can be likable. They can be a player's coach. They can be this. They can be that. At the end of the day, college football now is a transactional business. And if you're the head coach at the University of Michigan, you have got to be in the college football playoff picture every single year. That is more true now than it ever has been with the expansion from 4 to 12. When it was just 4 teams, yeah, maybe you could make an argument, right? Because it's such a small group of guys that are getting in there. But now that it's 12 teams, and you got teams like SMU and Boise State, and now you got Indiana on the national stage, you got Oregon, you got, Texas Tech is finding a way in there. The patience for the people that are funneling the money into that program in Ann Arbor is going to wear thin if you don't do it year 3. So I think that, like I said, right or wrong, for better or worse, going into 2026, it is a prove-it year for Sharon Moore to make sure, like, hey, you've got the facilities, you've got the resources, you've got the roster, you had all those young guys play an entire season of football. Now it's time to get this team back. Big Ten championship, I don't know that there's much stock being put into that, but you certainly got to be in the college football playoff. And if Michigan is not in the college football playoff next year, I think you're going to see at the end of the year some very serious conversations taking place about whether or not he's going to be the guy moving forward. A lot of that's going to be dictated by also the coaching market and who's available and all of that stuff, right? So there's a lot of layers to that. But at the end of the day, I think you're going to see going into 2026 that for Sharon Moore, now you got Bryce Underwood, a year of experience under his belt. You have a whole nother offseason with him in this offense to get things humming along. If you come out of the gate and you play Oklahoma early and, you got Iowa, you got Penn State, you're at Oregon, you're at Columbus. If you are not competitive,
wheels could fall off fast.
You got to win them, right? But that's the problem. Michigan wasn't even competitive in the biggest games this year. You have got to be competitive and at least look like you belong on the field, look like you can compete. There's only one team that's going to win on Saturday, but it's too often that this team looks like they just can't even compete with the best that they have to face under Sharon Moore's watch. Last year, he got a pass for it. This year, I think people aren't willing to give him a pass for it. And next year, certainly that mindset's going to be even stronger. So that's where I'm at, man. I'm rooting for him. I hope he succeeds. But at the end of the day, it is a results-driven business. And with the amount of money, Jared, you walk through the tunnel, you see guys coming in and out of the Michigan locker room that are not like part of the team. They're not on staff. But they got gray hair and they're wearing nice clothes and they got these big glasses on. You're like, I have no idea who these guys are, but I know that they're pouring money into the program. And the big house is basically a second home. And so is Chrysler and so is any other venue. They go wherever they want. They do whatever they want. And when those guys get unhappy, that's when you're going to see some things change. And so, again, rooting for Sharon, but next year is going to be a big year for this program. Jared, anything you think that we need to cover, anything we need to talk about that we didn't? I feel awful that there were so many comments that came in here that I wasn't even able to get to.
No, I think the fans were having a good time going back and forth. To the Buckeye fans that showed up, I appreciate you. They kept each other busy. It was funny. We held our own. Like
I said in the beginning of the show, man, as much as I hate them, we also need each other, because what I felt on Saturday, the ending of the game sucked, but all that energy that was in the stadium before the game and that whole vibe that week going into that thing, like, you need that other team in order to feel that. And there's a lot of college football teams out there that don't have what Michigan and Ohio State have. So for as much as I hate them, I also appreciate that we need them in our life. It's like that family member that you absolutely hate, but for some odd reason you need them in your life, you know?
Yeah. The 8-yard punt was fun. Yeah, I wanted to bring that up. That was a good time.
We didn't even get on the special teams train.
We all agree special teams needs a change.
So there's a lot that we didn't get to touch on tonight for the show. We didn't really talk about defense. We didn't talk about Wink Bardale. We didn't really talk about Chip Lindsey. Like, we didn't get into any of that stuff. And so, Jared, you and I, once we cut the live here, we'll talk about whether or not we go back live on Thursday, considering the fact that Michigan doesn't play a football game for a little while now.
Yeah.
As a side note, projected to play Texas in the Citrus Bowl, which, you know, if you look at Texas and kind of the way that season is going, you look at Michigan, I think that would be an intriguing matchup, and that would be an opportunity for Sharon Moore to, you know, kind of do what he did last year and go out on a high note and try to create some momentum going into the season. Man, there's a lot of comments in here. Do you think I should try to take a couple of these? What do you think, Jared?
I mean, I think we beat it up, man. I think we can come back. I want to come back Thursday though, because I think we can still talk about the coordinators. Right. A lot of people want to talk about the coordinators. We want to talk about the Barham headbutt. We want to talk about Here's what I'll do. I'm going to go through the comments. I don't know how many are in here. I'm guessing there's probably like over 300 comments that are in here. I am going to go through the comments after we cut the live, and I'm going to pick out some of the top ones, some of the best ones that I think we can turn into a conversation on Thursday. We'll use that to start off Fan-Led Thursday. So, Jared, we're agreeing to it right here. We'll be back live Thursday. Look, there's a lot more to unpack about this Ohio State game. It was really hard to pack it into an hour. You could see that because we're now at an hour and 16 minutes, and we only really talked about 2 topics this entire time. So Jared and I, Dr. Jared Johnson and I will be back on Thursday. Until then, I genuinely appreciate everybody that hopped in the comments here to make this such a live show, including all the Buckeyes that decided to pay us a visit. Look, we need you as much as you need us. Let's just admit that, and I think everything else is going to be cool. We'll see you back here on Thursday.